Part 1.
You will hear a man arranging to get a telephone connection. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
This is the ClearPoint Telephone Company Customer Service Office. My name is Ms. Jones. How may I help you?
Yes, I'm moving and I'd like to arrange to have a phone line installed.
Of course. Let me get some information from you first. May I have your name, please?
It's Kramer, Harold Kramer.
And would you spell your last name for me, please?
Kramer.
M-E-R. Got it. Okay. Could I have the address where you'd like to have the telephone connected?
That would be number 58, Fulton Avenue, apartment 12.
Is that a business or a residence?
A residence. It's my new home address.
Then the type of phone service you want is residential, not business?
Yes, it's for my home.
All right, fine. Now, let me get your employment information. Who is your current employer?
I work at the Wrightsville Medical Group.
Then your occupation is doctor?
No, I work for the doctors. I'm the office manager. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
Okay. And could I have your work phone number?
It's 637-555-9014.
9014. Great. Just one more thing. I need to know how long you've been at your current job.
I've been working there for quite a while now. Let me see. 9, that's right, 9 years.
Okay, good. You've been there long enough, so I don't need to ask about any other work history. Now, in addition to our basic phone service, we have several special services available.
Could you explain them to me?
Most customers opt for unlimited long-distance service. It really saves you money if you make a lot of long-distance calls.
That sounds like a good idea.
Then I'll put you down for long-distance service. Another popular service is voicemail. Voicemail takes all your messages electronically, and all it takes is one simple phone call to retrieve them.
Voicemail. No, I don't think so. I have an answering machine to take my messages. It's old, but it still works fine.
We also provide internet service if you're interested in that.
I am. Please put me down for internet as well as phone service.
Right. Okay, I think we're almost finished. I just need to schedule a time for the technician to go to your apartment and do the installation. Let me see. What about next Tuesday? Would that work for you?
No, not Tuesday. I'll be at a conference all day. Wednesday would work, though.
I'm afraid I won't have any technicians in your area on Wednesday. I could send someone on Friday.
That would be fine.
What time of day works best for you, morning or afternoon?
Morning would be best.
All right then, it's on the schedule. Do you have any questions?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you for calling ClearPoint.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear a lecturer discussing the possibility of creating nuclear fusion.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
We look at the sun, a huge ball streaming out essentially limitless energy into space, and we think about how we need that energy here on Earth. Our oil reserves are running out, coal burning causes much pollution, and nuclear energy has many dangers. But where does the sun itself get its energy? The answer is that the sun makes it using fusion, or, more specifically, in a hydrogen fusion process. There is no pollution, no radioactivity, no waste products, and we have plenty of hydrogen. So, hydrogen fusion seems the perfect answer to our energy needs, and scientists have long attempted to achieve it here on Earth. So what happens during this process? The first step is to make two light atomic particles approach. In the case of our sun, these are hydrogen particles, the lightest and also the easiest to deal with. However, the problem is that the nuclei of atoms have electric fields, and fusion between these particles is opposed by their similar electric charge. They most naturally repel each other, and the nuclei of all elements are exactly the same in this respect. Thus, in order to overcome this repulsion and force them together, in the second step, the particles are heated. The trouble is, you need a lot of heat, incredible temperatures of the sort only seen on the surface of the sun. This is many millions of degrees, far higher than the melting point of any known material. Still, the concept is simple. The hot, wildly moving particles, which are now called plasma, will crash into each other, resulting in the third step, the fusion into helium, which releases energy and begins a self-sustained process.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
So, we know how fusion works. Thus, the big question is, can we create it here on Earth? We actually have the technology to superheat hydrogen into plasma, but no container on Earth can deal with those temperatures. Thus, we need to confine this superheated material so that it doesn't touch anything. For that, we need a special reactor, and most research has focused on an apparatus known as a tokamak system. That's Tokamak, an acronym from some Russian words meaning toroidal chamber with magnetic field. It's an apt name, since a very powerful magnetic field is used to confine and suspend the super hot plasma in the air so that it doesn't touch anything. This is possible only because this plasma has an electric charge, which interacts with the magnetic field. Of course, the walls of the fusion vessel will still get hot, very hot, and to avoid being melted, they must be cooled with a cryogenic system to intensely low temperatures. But now we are faced with the second problem. If we are to draw power from this system, the reaction must be continuous and controllable. However, when fusion begins, the plasma becomes unstable, and at these temperatures, that is a very serious situation. If we lose control, a disaster could result. Despite the obstacles, in 2010, a European device managed some success, but needed far more power to generate the fusion reaction than that produced from the fusion itself. Obviously then, it was not useful as a power source. More to the point, this system could only sustain a fusion reaction for a fraction of a second, yet, to self-sustain, the fusion needs to run for at least 10 seconds. And the future looks bleak. Unfortunately, most scientists predict that many decades will have to pass before fusion power can become a practical reality.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear some students discussing an assignment about zoos.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
How are you doing?
Fine. I've just come over to talk about this assignment on the function of zoos. Oh, hello, Charles.
Hello, Brenda. That's good. I've just been in the library looking at some stuff. I think Adrian's been on the web.
Yes, I have.
Well, that's great. What have you found out about zoos?
I've been looking into the history both of zoos and of keeping animals generally.
I didn't think we had to do that.
Yes, it was one of the topics we had to research. We definitely need to cover it, even if only briefly, I think. After all, people have kept animals for recreation and pleasure for centuries. The ancient Egyptians kept collections of animals, and of course the Romans kept animals for recreation.
Ah, the Romans. That brings us to the general question of the treatment of animals and the mistreatment of them.
Yes, but that's not our topic. We've been told to keep off that. Now, where were we?
Our assignment is concerned with the purposes of zoos in general and in our modern era. We have to cover the history, but not in great depth. Our main focus is the scientific aspects of zoos and the work they do for conservation and so on.
We mustn't forget the question of who pays for them. Zoos are hugely expensive places to run nowadays. There are the costs of feeding the animals, obviously, and security for the animals and the public. What happens if they escaped and so on? We have to ask what benefits we get from this.
Adrian, I don't think you'll find we have to do that kind of thing at all.
But I've been looking into all that and the social benefits of zoos.
What I mean is, that's not part of this assignment. All this financial and safety stuff is not necessary. We should stick to their purposes. Now, what have you found out, Charles?
Well, I discovered that the World Association of Zoos and Aquariums was very helpful on this. I've got their website address here somewhere. I found out about the scientific research that zoos do. The other thing we should cover is the educational side of their work.
The educational side is pretty obvious. I've got lots of stuff here about this and more references to websites and information. There's also the area of entertainment. What about that?
He's got a point. I think we need to do some more research on that.
Fine, but it sounds like we've covered the history and science angles pretty well.
I agree. Let's leave those for now and plan some more study on the entertainment stuff.
And let's do some more work on the conservation element.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Oh yes, the Arabian oryx is a classic case.
The what?
The Arabian oryx. It's like a deer, but white. That is, it has a white body, but brown legs, and long curved horns. It normally lives in the hot desert in the Arabian Peninsula. Anyway, in the 70s, the population declined, and in 1972, the last wild oryx was shot and it became extinct in the wild. There were a few left in zoos in the United States where there was a captive breeding program. This was so successful that in 1982, a small population was reintroduced into the wild. Hunting of wild animals was made illegal, and there are now about 300 in Oman.
Oh.
Although there was a big problem there, I believe. The population went up to about 450 in the 90s, and then illegal hunting did take place. The population crashed again, and the programs had to be restarted. But that's been successful, and there are now, I believe, as you say, several hundred in the wild. This is all available on the websites that Adrian has noted.
There was a similar program in Saudi Arabia, and I think there are hundreds in the desert there now.
We can use that as a definite success story.
And what have you found out?
Yes, what have you come up with?
I'm going to the library now.
Good.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear 3 students discussing exam techniques with their tutor.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Morning, everyone. I thought we'd get together today and just talk about exam techniques. I'm sure everyone has different ideas about them. So, shall we find out what you do first when you get into an exam?
Check that you have the right exam paper?
It sounds funny, but students do actually answer the wrong exam paper sometimes. So check that it's your exam first. Then what?
Write your examination number on the answer sheet?
Well, it might sound obvious, but writing your examination number at the beginning of the exam can be a good idea. Apart from making sure the examiner knows who wrote the exam, can anyone say why?
It can help you relax?
Yes, that's right. Doing something easy like that gives you a chance to calm down. Right, so what do you do next?
Read the questions carefully?
Well, before you read the questions, what should you do?
Read the instructions.
Yes, you should read the instructions next. You need to know how many questions you have to answer and whether you have to answer all the questions or only some. What other important information do you need to check before you start?
How much time you have?
Yes, Jerry's right. You need to make sure that you know how long the exam is so you can manage your time properly. OK, what do you do next?
Read the questions?
Yes, it's very important to read the questions, not just once, but several times.
I usually make a few notes when I'm looking at the questions. Sometimes a question looks easy, and then when you start writing, you realize that it's actually more difficult than you thought.
Yeah, but you don't want to spend too much time writing notes.
No, but it's a good idea to jot down a few ideas to see if you can remember the arguments for the topics you studied most.
Once we've decided, is it better just to start at the beginning and answer the questions as they appear on the exam, or should we start with the easy questions?
Well, I start with the questions that I know better and leave the ones I'm not sure of for the end.
That's what I do. But I still keep an eye on the clock, especially when the questions are all worth the same number of marks.
Mac's right. If you write one very good answer, but it's only worth 30% of the marks, you still lose the other 70% on that exam.
So it's better to write our main ideas for a question, even if we don't have time to answer it properly.
Yes, absolutely. We can't give you marks for writing nothing. But if you give us your main ideas, we can give you some marks.
Oh, really? I wish I'd known that in my last exam. I spent all my time writing a long answer to one of the questions and didn't get round to the other two. I didn't understand why I got such a low mark.
Yeah, that's what happened to me. Luckily, my tutor explained it afterwards, so I never did that again.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.